Hey guys, what's going on? This is Herpty, an assassin tank currently on the Fat Man server. The guild I am currently assisting guild leader for is Chosen Elite, a competitive endgame raiding team. To start off, I'd like to say thanks for watching my first YouTube video. Feel free to subscribe for more videos to come when new content for SWTOR comes out. Being this is my first video, this will include a commentary for assassin tanks, a brief visual of my PvE raid build, along with a detailed explanation of Hardmode Denova's 8-man Kephess battle from a tank perspective. I'd like to keep this video as short as possible, so I'll skip the boring parts of how awesome I am at successfully tanking all the current content in Star Wars: The Old Republic. The most important skill an assassin tank should be using is Wither. Wither is an AoE high threat generator that deals kinetic damage to 5 enemies. One of the benefits of this skill is that it does not break any targets that are crowd controlled, making it very useful for spamming in trash without breaking CC. It also lowers the damage output of the affected targets by 5%, and slows them by 30% of their movement speed. My favorite thing about this skill is the extremely short cooldown. I mean, 8 seconds on a high threat ability is pretty OP. The second most important skill is Discharge. Discharge is yet another AoE high threat generator. It lowers your opponent's accuracy by 5%. The difference between this and Wither is that this ability deals internal damage and will break any CC'd targets. This ability's cooldown is 15 seconds, almost twice as long as Wither. The next skill is Shock. Shock is a single target instant cast ability, stunning weak and standard enemies for 3 seconds. Whenever possible, use Recklessness. This increases the crit chance of your force abilities by 60%. You gain 2 charges, expending a charge when you crit a force ability or use Force Lightning. If you use a Recklessness charge for Shock while it has an auto crit proc, it deals a bonus 50% critical damage. Force Lightning is a powerful spell dealing high damage per second while at the same time being a reliable self-heal. Shock and Wither give stacks of Hardness, Darkness. Each stack increases the damage of Force Lightning by 25%, while also giving an immunity to interrupt and pushback. While having 1 stack of Darkness is enough to prevent Force Lightning from being interrupted from damage, having 3 stacks will not only let you pump out 75% more damage, but will also heal you for 8% of your total health. Thresh is considered a force dump in hopes of getting Shock and auto crit proc. That's it. The reason I wouldn't use this often is due to the fact that as a tank you shouldn't have any accuracy. This ability can be dodged and will be dodged quite often, unlike Shock, Wither, and Discharge. Force Pull should almost always be the opening skill on a boss fight. It costs no force, generates a high amount of threat, and can't be used in melee range, which is where you'll be the entire fight. This ability has a 45-second cooldown and will pull the target towards you. What good would a tank be without taunts? Taunt forces your target to attack you for 6 seconds. AoE taunt works the same way, with the exceptions of the range and the number of mobs forced to attack you. Instead of 30 meters forcing a single target to attack you, AoE taunt is 15 meters and forces all targets within range to attack you. While single taunt has a 15-second cooldown, AoE taunt has 45-second cooldown. What's not included in the tooltip, thanks BioWare, is that taunt also takes the person highest on the threat table, matches your threat to theirs, and multiplies that threat by 1.3. In other words, taunt will put you at 30% higher threat than the highest current person, including yourself. This means if you have a threat table of 1,000 threat, taunting would generate 300 threat. If you were at 10,000 threat, taunt would generate 3,000 threat. This is what is called taunt boosting. Force Sprint is one of our best utility skills. With a 30-second cooldown and 20 seconds if you're spec'd into it, Force Sprint grants 150% increased movement speed for 2 seconds. This will allow for greater mobility for when you have to tank swap, or for quick recoveries when you're knocked back. Having tested this, you can sprint about 35 meters in 2 seconds. Dark Ward is our most used defensive ability. When used, it increases shield chance by 15%. It grants 8 charges, expending a charge each time you shield an attack. If spec'd into it, which I would recommend unless you want to die and blame your healers, it increases your shield chance by 20%, up from 15. The ward lasts for 20 seconds and only has a cooldown of 12 seconds. This is one of those abilities that doesn't generally hurt to spam, as it only uses 10 force. Another defensive cooldown is Deflection. This ability raises your ranged and melee defenses by 50% for 12 seconds. This ability has a 2-minute cooldown. And last but not least is Overcharge Saber. This skill raises the amount of damage and healing of your charges by 100%. I'd like to think that the best part of this spell is that it heals you for 10% of your total health. The best defensive cooldown in the entire game is Force Shroud. When properly spec'd, it removes all hostile effects and completely resists force and tech attacks for 5 seconds. On top of that, it only has a 45-second cooldown, making it easily the shortest defensive cooldown in the entire game. Anyone who has attempted Denova's Hardmode, Kephess, knows of his killer AoE, Gift of the Masters. To put how OP Force Shroud really is, I'll simply say that 5 seconds is plenty of time to laugh your way out of Kephess's Gift of the Masters. Now that abilities are done with, I'll briefly show you my spec tree without getting into detail. I've looked into each talent very closely, trying to figure out what synergizes best. To be honest, most of the talents can be swapped based on what your raid needs. For example, if your group is having trouble killing the Bomb Walker on Kephess, you can always spec into Nerve-Wracking, which increases damage taken by 9% on the targets affected by your spike and electrocute. This means for 6 seconds you buff your raid's damage on the Bomb Walker, which, for some groups, is a DPS check in hard mode. Since I focus more on tanking rather than doing damage, I feel this spec gives an assassin the highest survivability possible, which is our main role as a tank. Generally, in the beginning of a boss fight, the opening that I personally enjoy using is the best way to generate as much threat as possible. First, I open with Force Pull, then Wither, and finally Discharge. This helps rack up your threat table as high as it can go in 2 global cooldowns due to the high threat generating abilities. Then I Shock, and I use my Single Taunt immediately after. Then I Force Lightning, Shock, and AoE Taunt. Now, most tanks would say, hey now, you have to save your Single Taunt for tank swaps. Blah 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 fucking blah. Trust me, Single Taunt will come off cooldown by the time you need to tank swap, so don't listen to them. Those tanks suck anyway. And let's not forget, I'm awesome. Hard Mode Kephess is currently Star Wars' most difficult battle. This commentary is supposed to go over all of the mechanics in the fight and enlighten you by showing you our guild's method. We felt that these methods were the most solid ways to ensure a smooth run. Let's get on to the mechanics. Throughout the fight, the big War Strider will single target random people, dealing 20% of their health each hit. Between the single targets, it will spray an AoE that must be avoided until the War Strider is defeated. The battle starts with 3 droids that must be killed. The droids cast Calibrating Shot every few seconds. For each shot they complete, they are buffed in damage. When possible, interrupt this ability as it will make healing much easier on the healers. After killing these droids, a Bomb Walker will spawn in one of 3 locations. This is a DPS check for the fight. It would be wise to keep this mob stunned for as long as possible, as the damage they deal is massive. Whoever lands the killing blow will receive the same explosion icon above their head. That person has to then run under the War Strider droid in the middle of the room and wait to be pulled up. If your group is lucky enough to have a sorcerer, they can pull the person from underneath the droid to help their teammate avoid the damage taken. The sorcerer just needs to wait until the bomb icon disappears from above their head. Once the droid collapses, you will then have 20 seconds to unleash as much damage as possible. It is important to have the person with the bomb icon get to the droid as fast as possible, as the timer to the next phase begins once the Bomb Walker dies. Shortly after the War Strider stands up, and sometimes while it's still down, a mob will spawn right next to your group. There will be 5 Trandoshan Trench Cutters and a Trandoshan Warrior. The Warrior will be the biggest mob of them all, and will have a purple shield around him. It is very important that you do not attack any of the Trench Cutters while this shield is up. The only way to get rid of the purple shield is to focus down the Warrior. During this phase, speed is essential. The frequency between these mobs is about 20 seconds. Therefore, your group must focus down the Warrior and then AoE down the remaining Trandoshans before the next group spawns. After the AoE mobs die will be another Bomb Walker phase, followed by a burn phase. Once this burn phase ends, come 2 Pulsar droids. When they land on the ground, the East droid will surround itself with a giant purple AoE, and the West droid will begin rail-shotting random players after a certain amount of time. It is extremely important that the entire group is stacked directly on top of this West droid as quickly as possible. If players take too long, the rail shots will deal massive damage to random players, and in some cases one-shot a player. After 20 seconds, the droid will swap AoEs. Players must run and stack directly on top of the other droid. After about 4 times of running back and forth like a game of table tennis, the droids should both be dead and the next phase starts. Kephess will now jump out of his War Strider. The best geared tank should probably pick him up. Be sure that your raid group does not start blowing precious cooldowns on Kephess, because another bomb will spawn. Kephess will periodically jump up in the air, leaving a red circle on the ground where he'll land. This is one of Kephess's aggro threat table drops, resetting the threat as if it were a brand new fight. Therefore, he must be taunted by one of the tanks. Be sure that you are not standing with anyone behind you. In other words, isolate yourself, because Kephess will one-shot most DPS that are hit by his cleave. Also, Kephess will place a nasty dot on the first person he hits, which probably should be one of the tanks. It's near impossible and quite dumb to willingly tank Kephess while this dot is on the tank. So, immediately after the dot is placed, the other tank needs to taunt Kephess, still making sure that no one in the raid is behind them. A quick tip on how to deal with the first red circle is to have the tank that is killing the bomb walker to come over and be ready to taunt after the bomb dies. Then, the tank that has the dot can assist in finishing off the burn phase. This is the most crucial bomb that must go down. On the 2 previous bombs, you had 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 damage classes pounding on the bomb walker. Once Kephess comes down, you'll lose a tank's DPS and most likely a healer's, not to mention any derp DPS that are actually attacking the boss instead of looking for that last bomb. It's also more crucial that this bomb stay stunned, as the healers will have their hands full healing the tank with Kephess. In my opinion, this is one of the most challenging parts of the fight to accomplish for tanks. I typically look at my target of target for the dot when I'm waiting to taunt off Kephess. This is also a threat check for most tanks to hold aggro. Be sure to look at my opening rotation earlier in the video, and I guarantee you won't lose aggro. For this phase, have the tanks swap turns receiving the dot by taunting first. The reason is so tanks can utilize their AoE taunt to help hold threat on Kephess. Once he's at 60%, line of sight as much of the ranged DPS as possible. Snipers can use their entrench to avoid the pull altogether, and the sniper bubble can help mitigate raid damage as they run towards the sniper. At 58%, Kephess will pull the entire raid group to him, immediately dealing around 6,000 damage a second. Anyone that gets pulled in must get out as fast as possible. Juggernauts can intercede to the entrenched sniper, or anyone else that got line of sighted for the gift. As an assassin tank, this is where healers will glorify you. The instant you are pulled in, a simple force shroud will mitigate 100% of the damage. Once everyone makes it out, the final phase begins. Kephess will stop his gift of the masters and run to the person with highest aggro. Kephess will run at the tank and almost immediately knock them back. A split second after this knockback, he'll cast Breath of the Masters. The other tank should taunt during the cast, almost as if he were trying to interrupt it with his taunt. The tank that is currently being hit should begin running after they are knocked back. Kephess will finish his breath on the first tank and then immediately hit the next tank. It is vital that the taunt is cast before the breath finishes, or else Kephess will one-shot the tank. So, the first tank with the Breath of the Masters will be running along the wall, dropping 5 purple circles, each 3 seconds apart. The circles will activate after 2 seconds, so if the tank is not out of the circle in 2 seconds, they'll get one-shot. By the time the 5th purple circle is dropped, Kephess will knock back the current tank and again perform a Breath of the Masters. This phase repeats until someone derps or Kephess dies. Aside from the Battle of SWTOR, this phase is my favorite. There are many things both tanks have to watch, and they both need to rely on each other more than any other fight. Here are several tips that will help both tanks through this phase. As a tank, it would be wise to tank Kephess with your back against the wall. This will help you from being knocked back into any activated purple circle, and will keep Kephess from chasing after you as you fly across the map. It will keep the boss still, which makes it easier for everyone. One thing I noticed that most tanks do is run in a straight line away from Kephess while dropping these purple circles, all 5 of them. This will guarantee that this tank will be out of range to taunt Kephess and will result in the other tank getting one shot. My best piece of advice to you is to place the 3 circles going out in a straight line, and then staggering the remaining 2 as you make your way back to Kephess. From a sky view, this should have the circles appear as an Olympic rings symbol. If the tanks do this, they will always be in range of Kephess, provided they kept him in the same place. This concludes my first commentary video on assassin tanking and the strategy for 8-man Hardmode Denova's Kephess battle. Feel free to subscribe to my channel and be sure to hit the like button. If anyone watching is interested in joining Chosen Elite for new content, please post an application at our website listed below. I'd like to give a shout out to Wolfshade, the leader of Chosen Elite, for all the hard work and effort he's put into bringing us all together. He strongly values keeping his guild members happy, and is one of the fairest guild leaders I've ever seen. I'd also like to give a shout out to Eve Demon. We miss your crazy ass, man. We hope you're making lots of money in the real world by selling those cardinal rubies. I'd like to thank the very dedicated members that currently sacrifice, or have sacrificed their time for the better of the guild, in rolling tanks. I tried to keep this video as short as possible, and I gotta give you props if you were able to stay awake through it all. If you'd like to see an uninterrupted, full-length video of 8-man Hardmode Kephess, please visit the link below. You can also view a 16-man Hardmode Kephess kill by visiting the Chosen Elite website. Until next time, may the Force be with you.